The shattering discoverer Alina Winters stood frozen in the doorway of her husband's corner office, her heart shattering into a million pieces. The lunch she had brought from their favorite Italian restaurant slipped from her trembling hands, the containers crashing to the marble floor. There, pressed against David's mahogany desk, was Camila Rodriguez, the company's VP of marketing. Her red dress hiked up, David's hands on her waist. Time seemed to stop as David's steel-gray eyes met Alina's shocked hazel ones across the room. His face went pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Camila turned with a satisfied smirk, adjusting her dress with deliberate slowness, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. "Alina, this isn't what it looks like," David stammered, stepping away from Camila, his usually confident voice cracking with desperation. But Alina had already seen enough. The woman who had built a wellness empire from nothing, who had faced down ruthless investors and skeptical board members, felt her world crumble in an instant. Without a word, she turned and walked away, her designer heels clicking against the polished floors of Sterling Technologies like a countdown to the end of everything she had believed in. The aftermath of betrayal 3 weeks later, Lena sat in her pristine Manhattan apartment, staring at the divorce papers spread across her glass dining table. The penthouse that had once been filled with laughter and love now felt like a mausoleum of broken dreams. The city lights twinkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Their beauty felt hollow, meaningless. Her wellness company, Harmony Life, had just secured its biggest investment round yet, but success felt bitter without someone to share it with. Alina had poured herself into work, using 16-hour days to numb the pain that threatened to consume her. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror showed the toll it had taken. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her usually glowing skin looked pale and drawn. She had signed the papers that morning, officially ending 18 months of marriage to David Sterling, the tech billionaire who had swept her off her feet at a venture capital conference. They had been the golden couple of Silicon Valley, their love story featured in magazines and blogs.
Ow!
Now it was just another cautionary tale about trust and betrayal. The pregnancy test in her trembling hand showed 2 clear pink lines. Alina sank onto her bathroom floor, the cool marble pressing against her silk pajamas. The irony was cruel and perfect. For months, during their marriage, she had dreamed of this moment, imagining David's face lighting up with joy as she told him they were going to be parents. She had even bought a special gift box, planning the perfect reveal. Now, 3 weeks after signing divorce papers, she was carrying the child of the man who had destroyed her trust, her faith in love itself. The weight of Secret Alina's phone buzzed constantly with calls from her assistant, her board members, her best friend Rosa, who had been checking on her every day since the divorce. But Alina couldn't bring herself to answer. How could she explain that the woman who helped millions find balance and peace in their lives couldn't find any in her own? She moved through her apartment like a ghost, touching the spaces where David's presence still lingered. The kitchen where he had attempted to cook her birthday dinner, setting off every smoke alarm in the building. The living room where they had danced to old jazz records on lazy Sunday mornings. The terrace where he had proposed, promising her forever under a canopy of stars. Every memory felt tainted now, poisoned by the image of him with Camila. Elena's hand moved to her still flat stomach. Inside her, a tiny life was growing, a piece of David that she couldn't simply divorce away. The baby would have his dark hair, maybe his determined jaw, possibly his brilliant mind that had built an empire from a college dorm room project. The business magazines had been relentless in their coverage of the divorce. Tech's golden couple calls it quits. Wellness queen walks away from billion-dollar love story. Silicon Valley's most eligible bachelor back on the market. If they only knew the whole story. The lonely truth. Lena made herself a cup of herbal tea. Her movements, mechanical and precise. Everything in her life had always been carefully curated, from her minimalist apartment design to her organic lifestyle brand. Control had been her armor, her way of building something meaningful from nothing.
Ow.
But now, carrying David's child, she felt that control slipping away. She had built Harmony Life on the principle that balance was everything. That inner peace came from aligning your actions with your values. But what happened when the person you loved most violated every value you held dear? What happened when forgiveness felt impossible, but moving on felt equally wrong? The baby complicated everything. Lena couldn't simply cut David out of her life. Now, couldn't pretend their story was over. His child would be a permanent link between them, a living reminder of both their love and his betrayal. Elena's laptop sat open on her coffee table, showing emails from her PR team about damage control, investor relations, brand management. The wellness industry was unforgiving to leaders who couldn't keep their own lives together. Her competitors were already circling, ready to capitalize on any sign of weakness. But as Elena placed her hand over her stomach, feeling the faintest flutter that might have been imagination or might have been life, she realized something important. This baby wasn't a complication or a problem to be managed. This baby was innocent, deserving of love and protection regardless of the circumstances of its conception. Elena picked up her phone and scrolled to David's contact. She had never deleted his number, telling herself it was for business purposes. Since their companies still had overlapping interests, her finger hovered over the call button for long minutes before she switched to text instead. "We need to talk. I'm pregnant." She hit send before she could change her mind, then immediately turned off her phone. David would see the message eventually, would demand answers, would want to be involved. But tonight, Elena needed to be alone with this new reality. This tiny spark of life that had changed everything yet again. Outside her windows, Manhattan hummed with its endless energy. Millions of people living their complicated lives, making their impossible choices. Elena pressed her forehead against the cool glass and allowed herself, for the first time in 3 weeks, to cry for everything she had lost and everything she might still find. The storm before dawn, David Sterling hadn't slept in 3 days. The text message from Elena sat on his phone screen like a bomb that had already detonated, reshaping his entire world with 8 simple words. He paced his penthouse office, rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows as Manhattan disappeared behind storm clouds. His empire. Sterling Technologies sprawled across multiple buildings below, representing 15 years of 18 days and ruthless ambition. But all of it felt meaningless now. Elena was pregnant with his child. She believed he had betrayed everything they had built together. The irony burned in his chest. He had spent 3 months respecting her space, honoring her decision to walk away, swallowing the truth about Camila's manipulations because his pride and shame had paralyzed him. But a baby changed everything. This wasn't just about them anymore. David's private investigator had delivered the report 2 weeks ago. Security footage, phone records, email trails, witness statements, everything proving that Camila Rodriguez had orchestrated their encounter, timing it perfectly with Elena's surprise visit. I'd been planning it for months, jealous of Elena's success and determined to destroy their marriage. The evidence was overwhelming, but David knew it might be too late. Trust once broken was nearly impossible to rebuild. The desperate flight despite the storm warnings. David ordered his helicopter. Prepared. His pilot protested, citing dangerous wind conditions and poor visibility, but David didn't care. He had spent 3 months being careful, being respectful, being everything Elena had asked him to be. Now his child was growing inside her, and he refused to waste another moment on pride or protocol. The helicopter ride was turbulent, rain hammering the aircraft as they navigated between Manhattan's steel and glass towers. David barely noticed the danger, his mind spinning through memories. Elena's face, when they first met at the venture capital conference, her passionate pitch for Harmony Life capturing his attention before her beauty did, the way she had looked walking down the aisle, so radiant it had taken his breath away. Devastating hurt in her eyes that day in his office, when everything fell apart. They landed on Elena's building with a jarring thud, the aircraft fighting crosswinds that threatened to push them off course. David was soaked through before he reached the roof access, his usually immaculate appearance forgotten in his desperation to reach her. The elevator seemed to crawl between floors. David loosened his tie, feeling like he was suffocating. Right? Did he have to be here? He had lost that right the day he let her walk away without fighting, without explaining what had really happened. The confrontation Elena's penthouse still felt like home despite everything. The minimalist design, the organic textures, the way the morning light filtered through her plants. David had insisted she'd keep it in the divorce, unable to imagine her anywhere else. "You can't just land a helicopter on my roof, David." Elena's voice carried down the hallway. She appeared wearing a cream sweater that emphasized her glowing skin, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. The sight of that gesture hit him like a physical blow. "You're pregnant?" he said, his voice cracking with emotion. Very observant. Is that what they teach at Stanford Business School these days? Her sarcasm was familiar, but he could see the uncertainty in her hazel eyes, the vulnerability she was trying to hide. "I know I have no right to be here," David said, taking a step forward, water still dripping from his clothes. "Ash!" "My child, too." Elena's carefully constructed walls began to crack. He saw it in the slight tremor of her lower lip, the way her fingers twisted the gold necklace he had given her on their first anniversary. She still wore it, he realized with a surge of hope. "The child, yes," she said quietly, "but I'm not yours. Anymore, David? You made that choice." The words hit him like bullets. "She was never my girlfriend, Elena. I've been alone since you left. Every night, every day." "Funny, that's not what it looked like in your office." The memory made him flinch. "It wasn't what you think. Camila set the whole thing up because I had rejected her advances. But when you found us, when I saw your face," he ran a hand through his wet hair, "I was too ashamed to fight it, too proud to beg. I thought you deserved better than a husband you couldn't trust." Elena swayed slightly, and instinct had him crossing the room to steady her, his hands gentle on her elbows. She didn't pull away immediately, and dangerous hope bloomed in his chest. "Why are you telling me this now?" she whispered. "Because that's my child you're carrying." His thumb brushed against her sweater, just above where their baby grew. "Because I've spent every day since you left drowning in regret. Because I love you, Elena. I never stopped." The evidence of love. Elena jerked away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. "Love isn't enough, David. Trust is everything. You let me believe the worst. You let me walk away thinking you had chosen her over everything we had. I know." The words felt like glass in his throat. "I know I handled everything wrong. But please, Elena, let me show you the truth." David pulled out his phone, showing her the investigative report, the security footage, the evidence of Camila's deception. Elena read in silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. "She planned all of it," Elena said finally, her voice barely audible. "The timing, the positioning, everything. She wanted to destroy us," David confirmed. "And I let her succeed because I was too proud to fight for what mattered most." Thunder crashed outside, making the windows rattle. Elena moved to look out at the storm-darkened city, her reflection overlaid against the rain-streaked glass. "I have a board meeting in an hour," she said finally. "I need you to leave." David felt his heart breaking all over again. "Elena, please." "Not saying no to your involvement with the baby," she clarified, still not looking at him. "But I need time. This isn't just about us anymore." David wanted to argue to stay, to pull her into his arms and never let go. But he had lost that right. Instead, he nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours about arrangements," she added, her CEO voice firmly in place. "To hell with lawyers," he said quietly. "When you're ready to talk." "Really talk? Call me? Anytime, day or night. I'll be there." As the elevator doors began to close, Elena's voice stopped him. "David." He held the door, hope surging. "Yes, don't send Camila to any more board meetings. I can't look at her without seeing that day." The pain in her voice gutted him. "She's gone," he said firmly. "I fired her the day after you left. Should have done it sooner." Elena nodded once, and the elevator doors closed between them. But for the first time in 3 months, David felt something like hope, because somewhere between the storm outside and the storm in their hearts he had seen a flicker of the love they had once shared, and this time he wouldn't let pride or shame stand in his way. The coffee shop revelation, 2 weeks of returned gifts, and unanswered calls had pushed David to his breaking point. Every organic pregnancy tea, Every prenatal vitamin, every carefully chosen book on motherhood came back to his office untouched. Alina was shutting him out completely, and David felt like he was drowning in regret and desperation. He knew her routine as well as his own heartbeat. Every morning at 7 sharp, Alina would visit the Daily Grind, the little coffee shop near her office where they had shared their first official date. David arrived early, choosing their old table by the window. The one where he had first realized he was falling in love with more than just her brilliant business mind. When Alina walked through the door in a flowing navy dress that couldn't hide her emerging bump, David's heart nearly stopped. She looked radiant despite everything, that natural glow that had always taken his breath away, now enhanced by pregnancy. She saw him immediately and turned to leave. 5 minutes, he called out, following her onto the busy sidewalk. Give me 5 minutes, Alina. She kept walking, her chestnut hair catching the morning sunlight. I gave you 18 months of marriage, David. Look how that turned out. You read the investigative report, he said, matching her pace. You know what Camila did? What really happened that day? Alina stopped so abruptly that a businessman behind them nearly collided with her. Yes, I read about her manipulation. What I don't understand is why you let me believe it. Why you let me walk away thinking you had betrayed me. The raw pain in her voice made him flinch. Around them, Manhattan buzzed with its usual energy, oblivious to the drama unfolding on its sidewalks. Because I was ashamed, he admitted quietly. Not of cheating. I never cheated on you. I was ashamed that I had let someone like Camila get close enough to hurt you. That I had been so focused on the IPO that I missed the signs. The breakfast truce, a taxi honked nearby, making Alina jump. Instinctively, David moved to shield her from the street noise. She noticed the protective gesture, and something flickered in her eyes. You can't just show up with explanations and expect everything to be fine, she said. But her voice lacked its earlier conviction. I don't, he replied. But I'm asking for a chance to prove myself, not just for the baby's sake, but for us. Alina's hand moved to her stomach, a gesture that made David's throat tight with emotion every time he saw it. There is no us anymore, David. Why are you still wearing the necklace I gave you? Her fingers flew to the gold chain at her throat. For a moment, vulnerability cracked through her careful facade. I have a meeting, she said finally. Have breakfast with me first. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. The internal struggle played across her face. Finally, she nodded once, and relief flooded through him. Inside the cafe, David pulled out her chair, an old habit he had never lost. She ordered mint tea. He got black coffee. Just like before, just like always. The lawyers sent over the co-parenting agreement, she said once their drinks arrived. I'm not signing it. Alina's eyes narrowed. David, I'm not agreeing to scheduled visits and supervised interaction with my child before they're even born. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. I want to be part of this pregnancy, Alina. All of it. Doctor's appointments. The ultrasounds, the birth plans, everything. I've already missed so much. Please don't ask me to miss more. Alina stared into her tea, watching the mint leaves swirl. The first ultrasound is next Thursday, 10 o'clock. Hope bloomed in his chest. I'll be there. This doesn't change anything between us, she warned. Noted, he said softly. I'm grateful for the chance. The doctor's office, the waiting room at Manhattan Women's Health, felt like neutral territory. David sat beside Alina, careful not to crowd her space, but close enough to offer support if she needed it. Other couples chatted excitedly around them. But David and Alina sat in careful silence, the weight of their complicated history filling the space between them. When Dr. Patricia Williams called Alina's name, David stood automatically. Alina hesitated, then nodded for him to follow. It was progress, small but significant. The ultrasound room was dimly lit, medical equipment humming softly. Alina lay on the examination table, her dress pulled up to expose her still small bump. David had seen her body countless times during their marriage, but this felt different, sacred somehow. Let's see what we have here, Dr. Williams said warmly, applying gel to Alina's skin. The ultrasound wand moved across her stomach, and suddenly the room filled with a rapid, rhythmic sound. Is that? David's voice broke. Your baby's heartbeat, Dr. Williams confirmed with a smile. Strong and healthy. On the screen, a tiny form appeared, barely recognizable but unmistakably human. David reached for Elena's hand without thinking, and for a moment, she let him hold it. Everything looks perfect, the doctor continued. Due date is looking like early June. Would you like to know the sex? Elena and David looked at each other. It's too early, Elena said quietly. With the new technology, we can tell as early as 10 weeks. You're at 12 weeks now. David squeezed Elena's hand gently. Whatever you want, he whispered. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring at the screen where their child's heart beat steadily. Yes, she said finally. We want to know. Dr. Williams smiled and moved the wand carefully. Congratulations, you're having a little girl. The healing begins outside the doctor's office. Elena and David stood on the sidewalk in stunned silence. A daughter. They were having a daughter. A girl, Elena said softly, one hand pressed to her stomach. She'll be beautiful, David said. Just like her mother. Elena looked at him then, really looked at him, and David saw tears in her eyes. I'm scared, David. I'm scared of trusting you again and getting hurt. I'm scared of raising a child in a broken home. I'm scared of everything. David stepped closer, his hands gentle on her shoulders. I'm scared too. Scared I've lost you forever. Scared I'll mess this up again. But Elena, I swear to you, I will spend every day for the rest of my life proving that you and our daughter are the most important things in my world. Actions, not words, Elena whispered. Actions, he agreed. Starting now, over the following weeks, David kept his promise. He showed up to every prenatal appointment, brought Elena's favorite foods when morning sickness hit, read pregnancy books cover to cover. He didn't push for more than she was willing to give, but he was consistently present, reliable, devoted. Slowly, carefully, Elena began to trust again. She saw how David had fired Camila immediately, how he had restructured his company to prevent similar manipulations, how he had spent months in therapy dealing with his own issues around pride and communication. The second chance one evening in late autumn, Elena found David assembling a crib in what had once been their spare room. He looked up as she entered, screwdriver in hand, instruction manual spread across the floor. You said you wanted to be involved, he said with a tentative smile. I thought I'd start with furniture assembly. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, watching him work. You're doing it wrong, she said after a moment. What? David looked down at the partially assembled crib, then at the instructions. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Give me that. Elena slid down to the floor beside him, taking the screwdriver from his hands. Working together, they finished the crib. As the sun set outside their windows, when it was done, they sat back against the wall, Elena's head on David's shoulder. I forgive you, she said quietly. Not because of the baby, but because I love you. Because we're better together than apart. David turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands. I love you too. More than my next breath, more than anything in this world. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, like healing, like a promise of all the tomorrows they would build together. 6 months later, David Sterling held his daughter for the first time in the same hospital where Elena had once thought her world was ending. Little Victoria Sterling had her mother's hazel eyes and her father's determined chin, and she was absolutely perfect. Elena watched her husband cradling their child, tears streaming down his face, knew that sometimes the best love stories were the ones that had to be broken before they could be made whole again. Their story wasn't ending. It was just beginning.